Alright, so to begin with, I drew the eye the same size as the eye that's in the reference, which is about life size, maybe a little bit bigger. If you go smaller than that, it's going to mean it'll be harder to shade and harder to get greater accuracy. So we are going to start with that light outline. Ultimately, you don't want to be able to see your outline at the end of the drawing. It's just a guideline for you to begin with. The first step after you have the outline is, of course, to go to the shadow areas. So whenever you have something that is recessed, like the eye is always in a valley, which is the eye socket, you're going to have some shadows typically, unless there's harsh lighting or a flash going off. You should have some shadows around the eye and underneath the eye. There's kind of like a pocket underneath the eye too. By the way, when you're drawing the eye, it's important to get the underside of the lid as well. And you're describing a form here. It's not something flat, it's something 3D. So you always have to kind of envision that as you go to shade it. What's hollow, what's bulging out, and try and describe that through your mark, which is shading, or how you lay down that pencil stroke. There should be gradients everywhere. This is going to be true of painting as well, but you should be able to see a shift in value from dark to light. And that eye socket gets pretty dark. I had to look closely at the image to make sure I had the values correct. But you always want to go lighter than you think you're going to need to. So I started off with a 2B at first, and then I went in there later and started to darken up some areas. It is important that the iris is perfectly circular. The iris is a color part of the eye. The eyelid closes over that top part of the iris, and the eyelid on the bottom kind of closes over the iris on the bottom half as well. And then the pupil should go dead center of the iris, and it too is also a pretty much perfect circle, although you can see I didn't outline it. I left it as a soft edge, which is something that you should do as well. Now there is a rim around the eye. Most eyes have kind of a darker edge, and then it gets lighter as it moves towards the pupil. Think about the direction of your stroke. You can either wrap the stroke around the form or you can shade one direction. I chose to shade at a particular angle. Once you have the bulk of the shading kind of blocked in, then you can start to add detail. Like I did the rim around that glasses lens, and then I started to put in some of the hairs that are on the eyebrow. Now that eyebrow hair is important. You don't want to generalize it. You actually want to draw individual hairs, although you don't have to draw every single one. You should pay attention there. Look at the direction of the hair. Is it leaning left? Is it tilting right? Is it going up? The same is going to be true, by the way, of the eyelashes as well. This is a person who's fair-haired, so it's going to be a little harder to see the eyelashes, but we'll still pull a few of them out. And it's good to generalize. So when we're talking about things like eyebrow hair, you don't have to do every single one, and same is true of the eyelashes. Eyelashes curve to the left on the left side of the eye, and they curve to the right on the other side. And they curve around and up, kind of like a comma. Now we can go in and start to put in some of the whites. Now you want to make sure that you first of all erase any graphite where you intend to put white, because you don't want the white and the graphite to mix. And then you want to lightly fill in where that white should be. So it's important to take a look at your reference photo, kind of squint your eyes and ask yourself, where are the brightest points? It's still good to leave some of the tone of the paper exposed in some areas. Let that act as one of your values. But in some spots, like you have a cast shadow right beneath like that caruncle, the pink part of the eye to the right, and then there should be immediately following that a white or light area, because cast shadows have a hard edge. And by the way, I'm using zero blending on this drawing. So could you blend on here? Probably, but you want to avoid over blending. If you don't need to do it, then you shouldn't have to. I do like the look of just like the stroke of the pencil on the paper. I did end up using the kneaded eraser quite a bit on this drawing to erase out eyelashes and the bangs that are falling across the face and kind of like across the eye itself too. One thing that should be avoided at all costs is trying to outline too many things. So really there shouldn't be any outlines at all. There can be lines, right? Like there's lines in the eyebrow hair and maybe in the eyelashes. Although even there, I'm not pressing the same amount of pressure on there. So I'm getting kind of a gradient on each like eyebrow or eyelash that I'm drawing. Same is true of the lens that's around the eye. It's darker in some places and a little bit lighter in others. But also like areas around the eye, like the pocket around the eye, there's an area of shadow there. You don't want to outline that. You just want to shade up to that edge. And I keep an angled hatch line when I'm doing that. So here is my finished drawing. The biggest thing I can tell you about drawing hair is it's all about the direction of your stroke. You're trying to mimic this hair texture. So you want to pay attention to where the hair curves down or if it's pulled back, kind of like away from the scalp, and you want to mimic that with your stroke. And then it becomes about finding the light patterns. So where are the shadow shapes? Typically, you'll see dark areas like towards the roots of the hair, but you should also find gradients. So if hair curves in any way, you should have a gradient there. If there's spiral curls, you're going to have a whole bunch of gradients. So I'm picking out the dark shadow areas first, and I'm trying to shade those in. And I'm thinking about the direction of my stroke, trying to mimic the direction of the hair in the reference photo. And then once I have my darks and midtones filled in, then I can go in with the white pencil. Although again, make sure that you're erasing where you want to put the white so there's no graphite down on the paper previously. You don't want the graphite and the white to mix. I know I keep saying this over and over again, but it's so important. Remember that when you're using the white, it's important to get a gradient of white or lights too. So it's not just about getting a gradient with the graphite. You need to be able to go very pale white, almost to the tone of the paper. And then you need to be able to increase it and gradually increase it because hair has a lot of shine and you want to show that it has that shiny quality to it. I would like you to include the forehead and I want you to include the eyebrow as well. I got this to about 60% finished. I think you can do it on your own without any input or any information from me.